It begins with a cough. Not violent, not sudden. Just a worn, shallow rasp, like a shoe brushing across sand. A reminder of a body not so much failing as forgetting how to continue. He sits in the armchair that once anchored the living room. A high-backed leather relic, creased and solemn, the way old men become when no one looks them in the eyes anymore. No one is here to look into his eyes. The house listens only because it must. It has grown heavy with silence. He too has grown heavy, though he weighs less than ever. Age does not hollow you out, it saturates. He is soaked in time, pickled in the decades of what he did and did not say. Around him, the walls bear their memories, like poorly concealed bruises. Photographs, some framed, some curling at the edges, line the shelves. They depict smiles frozen in foreign eras. A young woman with hair pinned just so, the faintest glint of resignation in her eyes. A boy, eyes large and arms too thin, clutching a toy fire truck as if it were a shield. Another boy, older, mouth taut, staring into the lens as though daring it to understand him, and himself, of course, always himself, standing behind them, always behind, yet somehow, always in the way. He speaks now, not aloud, but within. A confession rising like steam off a dying kettle, not for salvation. He no longer believes in such things. He speaks because silence has grown too thick to breathe through. I thought I was being strong. It starts there, in the brittle marrow of that sentence. It's a mantra of old fathers, isn't it? That strength justifies all. That the rage, the volume, the hard rules, the broken dishes, the doors slammed so hard they learned to stay open, these were evidence of commitment, proof of vigilance, righteousness, he called it then. He remembers the first time he struck the table so hard, the plates jumped. His eldest had spilled milk. Just milk. The boy was 5. The glass had tipped easily, the way small things tip when joy is too sudden. Laughter had been the crime, joy the accomplice. The boy's eyes, startled, wide, had pierced something in him that day. Not guilt, not yet. Something else. A realization that he had been seen, not feared, not respected, just seen. I couldn't bear it, he whispers to himself, voice threadbare, to be seen as weak. He had mistaken fear for love, and then spent years ensuring no one could confuse the two again, especially not his children. The living room light flickers, a subtle betrayal. The bulb above, dusty and yellowed, stutters in its socket. He does not rise to fix it. The light has been dying slowly, and he has allowed it to, as with so many things. He counts the clicks of the clock on the mantelpiece. It was a gift, once, from his wife. Her name was Miriam. She had been soft in all the ways he found inconvenient. When she cried, it made him feel incompetent. When she questioned him, he felt mocked. When she held him in the dark and asked if he was happy, he felt cornered. She died with her mouth slightly open. He remembers that. He told the children it was quick. He lied. It was the one mercy he ever gave them. Even now, he does not know why he did it. There is a photograph of the family at a beach. He stares at it often. His eldest, maybe 9 or 10, buried up to his chest in sand, arms crossed over his belly as if pretending to be dead for fun. The boy had laughed when they took the photo, but the smile hadn't reached his eyes. He knows that now. He's learned to see that sort of smile in the mirror. He hasn't spoken to me in 13 years, the father says to no one. Not in anger, not even in sorrow, just in fact. The younger one calls sometimes. Polite, efficient. There's a granddaughter he has never met. Her name, he believes, is Lily. What does a tyrant do when the kingdom forgets his name? When his proclamations echo back only as dust settling in empty rooms? He reaches beside the chair, pulls out a journal, leather-bound, unwritten. A gift from a friend long dead. He'd never known what to write in it. Who writes when they already believe their words are law? But now he considers. Perhaps not law, perhaps confession. He opens to the first page. The paper is stubborn, yellowed at the edges, but waiting. Blankness can be a kind of forgiveness, he thinks, or a challenge. He writes a single line.
I was not a good man.
And beneath it, after a long pause, but I remember trying. The house creaks in response, perhaps settling, perhaps agreeing, perhaps just bored. Outside, the wind carries no particular message, just the indifferent sound of things continuing. But inside, something has begun to move. Not much, just enough to stir the dust. In the stillness before the echo, he waits. And he writes. The mornings are the worst, not because they bring pain, though they do, or because they come with that subtle nausea of another day survived. No, it is because mornings come with light, and light shows everything. He rises early still, not out of necessity, but from a habit carved by decades of command. For years he woke before his family, to sit at the kitchen table with coffee and the newspaper, waiting for others to stir so he might have something to control. Now he wakes to silence. The kitchen is smaller than he remembers, though nothing has changed. It's him. He has swollen inwardly, taken up space in memory, not in mass. He eats toast, dry, no butter. He no longer keeps butter. Too soft, too full of memory. Miriam used to butter his toast just slightly unevenly, an unconscious flourish that annoyed him more than it should have. He'd never said it aloud. He'd punished her instead with silence, a cruelty he wore like cologne. He remembers a time when his eldest was 12 and had slammed a door, such a small act, but the sound, the gall of it, had cracked something ancient and wild inside him. He had risen from his chair with all the ceremony of a general preparing for war. The boy hadn't run. He had just stood there, defiant, breathing hard. The slap had come quick, a single sharp punctuation mark. That was the first time his son stopped calling him Dad. Afterward, he blamed the boy's defiance, said it was necessary, said children needed boundaries, but he hadn't spoken to the boy for 3 days, not a word. He had let the air grow thick with discomfort, with shame, until Miriam intervened. Only then did he offer an apology, thin and conditional. He said, "I'm sorry you made me do that." Now alone, he repeats the line and feels the acid of it, the arrogance, the blindness. He cannot ask forgiveness from the walls, but he tries. The journal lies open on the kitchen table. It has become a companion of sorts. The first page has dried, the ink settled like sediment. He stares at it, then begins to write again. "I believed rage was a kind of love, that it meant I cared, that to be indifferent was worse. I thought control was protection, but all I built was a fortress they longed to escape." He closes the book and rests his fingers on its cover, feeling the grain of the leather. It's a small thing, this ritual of writing, but rituals are all he has left. No one writes back. No letters arrive. The mailbox is a monument to absence. He walks the hallway and pauses by the bedrooms. His son's doors are closed, though the rooms are empty. He never opened them after they left. Inside, time has been embalmed. Posters, old books, childhood clutter. He preserved it like a museum of guilt. In his younger son's room, there's a drawing pinned to the wall, crayon on construction paper. A house, lopsided and smiling. A figure labeled Mom, a smaller one labeled Me, and off to the side a dark scribble. No label. He knows it was him. The boy had always drawn his father in grey. He leaves the room quickly. Back in the living room, he sits in the same chair. The sun through the window moves slowly across the floor, creeping like guilt. He thinks of a specific day, years ago, the last time the family was whole in this house. Thanksgiving. The turkey had been dry, the conversation drier. His eldest had brought a girlfriend, quiet, observant. She had watched him during dinner like someone cataloguing weather patterns, not judging, just noticing. At one point, she had asked the boy about a scar on his forearm. The table had gone silent. The boy had replied, "Climbing accident." The father had said nothing, but he remembered the belt, the way it coiled and uncoiled like something living. He had not used it often, just enough. Later that night, the son told him, "She asked me why I still visit." "What did you say?" he had asked. The boy had looked him dead in the eyes. "I told her I'm trying to remember why." That was the last holiday. Now the chair groans beneath him. The house exhales a long, weary breath. He speaks aloud this time.
"I thought I was molding men, but I was breaking children."
The words hang there, tremble a little, then settle. There is no one to hear, but still, he says them. Outside, wind rattles the dry branches of the oak tree. A single leaf clinging past its time falls and lands on the porch with a sound like regret. And inside, the father writes again. There are certain sounds he cannot bear anymore. The hum of fluorescent lights, the static pop of a television left on too long, the shrill ring of a phone that doesn't ring for him. But the worst is the sound of drawers opening. It always reminds him of searching, of things hidden, of things taken, of things lost. He opens a drawer in the study, hands trembling slightly. Inside, old bills, manuals for appliances long broken, and a stack of unsent letters. Each one addressed to his eldest, each written, then folded, then tucked away. He reads one now, aloud. "David, I don't know how to talk to you anymore. I say things in my head that I wish I could say to your face, but when I try, it's like my mouth forgets how. I was raised to believe that silence was strength, but it has become my prison. I think I'm writing this because I hope someday you'll want to know what I never managed to say. I hope you'll forgive me, even if you never return. He doesn't cry, not because he's beyond tears, but because his body forgot how to offer them. He places the letter back, gently, as if it was something fragile and sacred. Then he closes the drawer with the careful reverence of a man who's buried too much already. The phone rings. Suddenly. Sharp. Surreal. It startles him, not just for its rarity, but for what it might mean. He lifts the receiver with hesitation, like touching something hot. Hello. A pause. Then a voice. Not his son's. A woman. Polite. Apologetic. Wrong number. He nods, says, "It's all right," and hangs up. But for a moment, just a breath, he had believed. He sits back down in the study, next to the window where the curtains have faded to a pale regret. The journal lies on the desk now, moved here from the kitchen. He opens to a new page and begins again. There are moments when I remember being a boy. Not many, but enough. My own father was a quiet man. His hands were always working, hammering, fixing, building, but he never touched me with kindness. I remember once, I broke a vase. He looked at me like I had broken his spine. He never hit me, not once, but his silence afterward was punishment enough to shape my bones around. He stops writing, thinks, then continues. I carried that silence like a weapon. I brought it into my marriage, into my fatherhood, and I sharpened it. I believed I was doing better. I told myself that yelling was more honest than absence. But what I gave my sons was a different kind of emptiness, one that screamed. He puts down the pen. He cannot tell how many pages he's filled, but each one feels like a splinter removed from beneath the skin. The day drags its feet across the floorboards. Time is less a flow now and more a slow leak. He watches the light fade from the walls. Shadows lengthen like old grudges. He remembers the last conversation he had with David. They were on the porch, a rare warm evening, the kind where even the air seems to hush, listening. David had said, "You know, you were the first person I ever hated." The father had laughed, out of reflex, a defense mechanism. "Hate is a strong word," he'd replied, as if that diminished its truth. David hadn't smiled. "I used to think that if I did everything right, you'd stop looking at me like I was an unfinished project." The words had landed like punches, and still he had said nothing, just nodded, not in agreement, but as if dismissing a child's tantrum. That was the last night they spoke. He replays that moment more than any other. The porch, the dusk, the way David's eyes had settled on him, not with anger, but exhaustion. The kind of fatigue that means surrender, that says, "I've carried this too long, I'm putting it down." And he had let him go. The journal remains open. He writes one last thing before the light disappears entirely. "Sometimes, I think the only true inheritance I gave my children was the silence between us." He closes the book. The room dims. He sits in the stillness, heart thudding a little slower now. And though no one speaks to him, though no one has called him dad in years, the walls seem to lean in, listening. Night folds in like a slow black tide. The house disappears in pieces, window by window, lamp by lamp, until only the study remains lit, a fragile outpost of thought. He sits there, slumped forward slightly, elbows on knees, hands clasped like a man waiting for news he already knows will never arrive. He dreams more now, not in sleep, but in the in-between, those porous hours when memory leaks into the present and everything feels soaked with some other time. Sometimes he sees Miriam at the stove, humming, back turned to him, like she always was in the end. Other times he sees David as a boy, crouched in the garden, whispering something to a caterpillar. Always something small, always something unreachable. He doesn't move much anymore. The house resists him, stairs too steep, cupboards too high, but the study, the chair, the journal, they allow him. They are the trinity of his late repentance. He's begun to place objects around him like relics. A cracked mug, Miriam once loved. A paperweight from the office he left after retirement. A single, unmatched sock that once belonged to his youngest. Altars aren't built. They emerge slowly from the sediment of loss. He flips the journal open again. The pages are beginning to ripple at the edges. His pen scratches faintly. "I used to believe that discipline was love made visible, that if I was hard they would grow strong. But I confused intimidation for guidance, and I confused silence for peace." He pauses. The words feel too clean, too convenient. He crosses out the last line and rewrites. "I confused silence for safety." The difference stings. Once he overheard Miriam crying in the bathroom. She thought the water running masked it. It didn't. He stood outside the door, fist clenched, jaw tight, not in anger, but in confusion. He didn't understand the source. He assumed it was her weakness, her softness. Only now does he realize it was grief, not for the life she had, but for the one she once imagined. He remembers her voice. Soft, yes, but not weak, not really. When she was dying, she didn't ask him to stay by her side. She asked him to be kind to the boys. He said he would, and he meant it, but he didn't know how. Outside, a dog barks once, then silence, then wind. The trees press against the glass, skeletal and uncertain. He shifts in the chair. His back complains. His legs ache, but he writes still. I have spent more years mourning the father I wasn't than being the father I could have been. On the shelf nearby is a small wooden box. Inside are keepsakes he once thought he'd pass down. Watch, cufflinks, a letter opener with his initials. Now they feel like props from a play no one will stage. He opens the box anyway, runs his fingers over the metal, cold, untouched. There was a time, he remembers, when David tried to give him a book, a memoir, something about healing and masculinity. He'd scoffed, called it self-indulgent nonsense. David had said nothing, just left the book on the table. It sat there for weeks before being moved to the garage, then eventually the trash. Now he cannot remember the title. He wonders, not for the first time, what David's voice sounds like now. If it has deepened, if it still carries that tentative edge, that cautious reach, or if it has become something firm, distant, unreachable. He writes again. A father is supposed to be a harbor. I was a cliff. Then beneath it, and they learned to sail away. The journal is half full now. He didn't expect to get this far. He assumed, like most things, he would abandon it once the pain dulled. But it hasn't dulled. It has just changed shape, less fire, more weight. He sets the pen down, leans back. The ceiling above him is cracked slightly, a long pale scar. He traces it with his eyes the way he once traced the curve of David's cheek as a newborn. He remembers that night, Miriam asleep, David on his chest, barely the size of a loaf of bread. He had felt something close to reverence and fear, so much fear. But he never told anyone, never said, I don't know how to do this. Instead, he built a shell of certainty and barked orders from within. He rises, slowly, joints reluctant, walks to the window. Outside, the yard is empty. No bikes, no shoes, no laughter, just grass, and dark, and the long memory of sound. He wonders, if he died tonight, what would happen? Would anyone come? Would anyone care? Would the silence he cultivated cradle him into the next world, or mock him for his craftsmanship? He doesn't know, but he asks the question, silently, to the window, to the night, to whatever still listens. Did I do anything right? The wind offers no reply. There's a room in the house he hasn't entered in almost 2 decades. It's not locked, nothing in this house is, but it resists, as if the very air beyond the door carries the weight of things unfinished. This was David's room, the older son, the first son, the stranger. He stands at the threshold now, hand on the knob, breath uneven. The wood feels warm, absurdly warm, as if holding some dormant heartbeat. He turns it. The door opens with a soft groan. Inside, nothing has changed, and everything has. The air smells faintly of dust and old paper. The curtains are drawn, casting the room in a hushed amber glow. The bed remains unmade. A small stack of books still rests on the nightstand, posters peeling slightly from the walls. One of them, a band he once mocked, stares back at him like an accusation. He steps inside, and the room seems to contract. He walks slowly, studying details as though deciphering runes. There's a dresser, chipped at the corner, on top a photograph in a cheap frame. David at 10, flanked by his brother and their mother. He is smiling, not forced, not performative, smiling like a boy who hasn't yet learned to flinch. He cannot hold the gaze. He places the frame face down. There's a journal on the desk. He knows it's wrong to read it, but the wrongness no longer matters. What else is a lifetime of regret, if not a graveyard of trespasses? He opens it. The handwriting is tight, angular, determined. He reads a passage, chosen at random. I think he hates me, not in the way people hate enemies, in the way people hate mirrors. I remind him of something he failed to bury. He talks about respect like it's currency, but he only knows how to spend fear. I try to be good, I really do, but he doesn't see me. Just the outline of who he wanted. He reads it twice, then closes the journal. He doesn't sit, he cannot. The chair beside the desk is too close to the past. He backs away, nearly stumbles. His hand finds the wall, steadies himself. He speaks, barely. I thought I was saving you. But the room, stubborn in its silence, does not indulge him. Later, He sits back in his study. The journal before him now feels insufficient, like a child's drawing in the face of a cathedral. Still, he writes, I entered the room today, not to reclaim it, not to conquer it, just to see, to let it judge me. I found no forgiveness there, only memory, but maybe that's all I deserve. He writes slower now, as if the ink itself resists, as if even his confessions have grown tired of him. He closes his eyes, sees David again, that boyish version, the one who still brought him drawings and asked if he'd watch. He remembers saying, later, always later. How many laters never arrived? He writes, My punishment is not your silence, David. It is that I finally hear you, and you are not speaking. A sound barely perceptible. A knock? No. The house settling. He tells himself this, repeats it, but he looks toward the hallway all the same. No one comes. He opens the window, the summer air tepid and limp. Crickets thrum like pulse beats. Somewhere, faintly, a siren. He wonders whose emergency it is, and if someone will make it in time. He closes the journal. On the cover, he traces his own name, not as pride, as identification, as liability. He thinks, I am the house now, quiet, watching, haunted. And then, without planning to, he whispers, Come home. The words fall, fragile, faithless, a last breath from a long-extinguished fire. But still, he says them. Some mornings arrive as a kind of mercy. Others, like this one, drag their feet through the corridors, disturbing dust that prefers to sleep. He wakes before dawn, not from rest but from the echo of a dream. Or perhaps it was a memory. The distinction grows blurrier with each year. In it, David was young again, standing at the edge of the lake where they once vacationed, his hand cupped around a skipping stone, asking, how many skips does it take to forget? And the dream father, faceless and mute, offered no answer. Now, in the dim kitchen, coffee brews itself into bitterness. The mug he chooses is chipped at the rim, a quiet emblem of damage born in daily silence. He sits at the table that has witnessed too many unspoken things. Opposite, a chair no longer has an owner. It holds absence like a faithful dog. He tries to eat. He cannot. The act feels dishonest. Nourishment is a contract between the body and hope, and he's long defaulted on the latter. The journal lies open beside him, pages thinned by touch. He reads yesterday's confession, half hoping it has changed in the night. It hasn't. Paper remembers. It holds its griefs without decay. He writes again. There is no apology that fits into a single sentence, no penance that clocks out at sunset. I tried to be a man. I became a warning. What I thought was strength was only thunder, loud, directionless, empty. The ink bleeds slightly on the page. Humidity. Or guilt. He watches the letters blur and wonders if, in some parallel version of the world, his son sits at a table just like this, scribbling something he'll never send. He dares to imagine it, not as hope, but as penance. A universe where David is at least telling his story, even if he refuses to hear the other side. Later that day, the phone rings. The sound startles him. It's rare now. Calls have thinned like his hair. Most people have made their peace or their distance. He answers. It's not David. It's his younger son, Paul. The one who learned to survive by becoming agreeable, invisible, half-present. Paul speaks cautiously, as though stepping around something sharp. Dad, I've been thinking, we should talk, all of us. Maybe, I don't know, if you want. He wants, but the wanting is wrapped in terror. He asks, all of us. A pause. Then David might come. No promises. He nods. Forgets the phone, doesn't see nods. Clears his throat. Tell me when. Next weekend, I'll drive. Okay. They hang up, and for a full minute, he simply stares at the phone, as if it might change its mind. Then, slowly, methodically, he begins to clean. Not the performative cleaning of guests, but something more ritualistic. He dusts picture frames, opens windows, changes linens. Each gesture is both preparation and distraction. He stands in David's room again. This time, he sits. He writes a letter, not one he'll give, just one he needs to write. David, there is no version of me you should forgive, but I want you to know, I see it now. I see you, not as a challenge to my rule, not as a threat to my control, but as a boy who wanted nothing more than to be loved without fear. You were never too much. I was too little. If you come, I will not speak first. I will listen. For once, I will listen. He folds the letter, places it beneath the journal, leaves the room. That night, sleep comes like a guest, unsure its welcome. In the final dream, David is older, not the boy, Not the man who vanished, someone in between. He says nothing, just sits across from him at the lake. They watch stones skip. Each one leaves a ripple. Each ripple fades. He wakes to dawn, light filtering through half-drawn curtains. He sits at the kitchen table again, same chair, same chipped mug. And for the first time in decades he hears something unfamiliar in the silence. Not forgiveness, but the possibility of being seen. And he wonders, not for the first time, not for the last, if healing ever really begins, or if it simply arrives when we stop defending ourselves from what we've become.